Alright guys, so we're going to start the seat on the club chair, and this is a wire edge seat, which is a little different than a hard edge seat. So therefore it has to be more of a fitted seat that you might be used to. So here's what I'll show you. See, wire edge, right? So it has to be fitted. So what we're going to do is we're going to start that. We can look over the overhead to see what I'm going to do. I have the deck cut, self deck, and I just wanted to show you that. You know, I have it marked deck, the back side. Can even mark it front, right? So, you know, in between, you know, these classes and even in regular work, you put fabric down and then you pick it up. You want to make sure you always have it marked, and I can't say that enough. Marked. The back side, I marked the back side and a definition of what it is that I understand. So, for instance, in this fabric here, it can run 8 ways. So, I mean, you don't want to be second guessing yourself if something's not marked, right? So the deck's going to be a straight stitch right across. So I think I can even put that on my sewing machine now. Throw that over there. We're going to get to that in a minute. But this is the part that I want to show you right now. Then we're going to sew it together and then we're going to put it on. So what I did when I first cut this, I cut this to size side to side. And I'm not sure if I did front to back, and I don't think I did, but I want to show you now. I have to fit this. So what I'm going to do is I have it marked. Look. Top, seat, front. Pretty good description, right? I'm going to run it right along that seam like so. I have my 1/2 inch seam right on the end already because it's cut to size, right? Now what I need to do is chalk the front because it has a little bit of a curve, right? And I'm just going to chalk the front like that. And then we're going to do it on the piece. Usually I'll do this on a flat surface, my cutting table, but just to show you guys, I'm going to do a 1/2 inch from here. Just got to do it on the piece. Now if you want to just make sure that you're good, what you can do is fold it in half just to take a look to see how nice, if they line up well, and that lined up pretty good. If there was a discrepancy I might have to do it again, but that looks pretty good. So that's the top. Okay, and then I have the front piece. Okay, that does not need any cutting at all. But notice I have the front seat top, like so. Notice that there looks like there's a color variation there. It's only because this is sitting up like so, flat, and this is sitting up. But don't be fooled by that. That's why you really want to make sure that you make sure you mark all your cover, because it all has to be going the same direction, right? So we're going to put this on over here for now. We're going to get ready to sew. But then we have to do one more thing. We have to cut some piping. So I have not cut my seat cushions yet, so I don't want to really hack into that bolt of fabric that I have until those are cut. I haven't cut them yet, as you know, if you've watched the other parts. So what I'm going to do is I have a piece of fabric that is left over. It's kind of a scrap piece of fabric. And look what I did, you guys. I actually marked the scrap piece of fabric top. So this here is a piece of fabric to be putting on. I can put on right along here, and I can even use it for my outside back. We're not having a skirt on this, so I don't need it on the skirt top. We are going to put a base welt on. I think a base welt would look nice, so we need that piece for a base welt. But I wanted to make a point here. On the cushions, I've already decided that we're going to cut it on the bias. That's very important for this fabric because it has a nap. It doesn't really matter too much on this part that I'm doing now. I'm going to actually angle this a little bit of bias, but I'm going to plan on after I cut my cushion. See, this is what you have to do. You have to plan on this, okay? This is all I'm carrying in my head, and you guys, once you get good at this, you do it over and over again. You can do the same thing. If you want to write everything down, that's what the purpose of these videos are, to get you set up like, you know, you could plan this out if you want. You can write everything down if you want. And when you get better, you have it in your head, which I do. So I'm planning. This is my plan. This is my approach. I don't want to cut into the bolt of fabric until the cushions are cut. You might be asking, why doesn't he just cut the cushions now? Well, because I like to get the body done and out of the way with the minimum fabric as I can, and that's the whole purpose. But I do need piping now. So I'm going to cut this. So I know what the top is. The top is here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to score up from the bottom here. I'm just going to make little marks like so. I'm going to score it to make sure after I cut it into a small piece that that I can know what the back side is when it's cut down to a smaller piece. So I'm going to measure the piping. Is right along here is 50 inches altogether. Hopefully I've got 50 inches. I'm sure I do. It's another thing I look at, I really concentrate on. Yep. I concentrate on making sure that I don't want to seam any piping except with one spot where it needs to be seen, in the back of the cushion. So I'm going to go right up here. This is going to be my seat. And then I'm going to have these pieces. I'm just going to need one piece from this. And go right up. I could save these for something else. Some of the piping, like for my outside back, if I like, or even the base. I'm going to cut this about an inch and about an inch and a half. And look at that, I freehand that, you guys. So let's just make sure. I'm going to save this piece, put this piece over here for now. So I'm going to make sure I have enough. Might have a little too much, I might even cut it down. I'm going to cut it down just a little bit. Make sure that I cut the side down that's not scored. See? So when you cut a piece of fabric into a smaller, thinner piece of fabric, sometimes it's even harder to see what side is what. So you never want to be second guessing. Okay, so now we're going to go over to the sewing machine. So I have my welting, my cord, my 5/32 cord, and you know, for quick reference, I haven't scored the back. See how easy it is when you're over here. Sometimes if you don't score the back, you end up looking at, well, which is the right side. Then you got to get up and make sure it matches. It's a pain. Make sure you score it with the chalk. Put your welting in, even the ends up, lift your foot, and start sewing. I have my machine set at 3. Put it down a little bit at 3, which is more than enough for a piping, and then when you sew the piping onto the other pieces, that's fine. Now, if I was sewing, when I sew the deck, I might shorten the stitch just a little bit, because that's just one stitch. So you'll notice on a stretchy fabric, what I'm finding out here, the piping, I mean the fabric gets smaller when you stretch it. So, you know, you don't want to be any less than an inch and a half when you cut this piping. But it works out pretty good with a little bit of a stretch with the salvage. So I'll show you this in a minute. Almost done. Nice smooth. Make sure your machine is functioning properly. Check your stitches before you start. That's a nice little welting. I like that. I love the fabric. Works out great. Now I'm going to take my top piece. What do I do with it? My top piece. I'm going to sew my piping on my top piece first. Of course, there's my top. I don't have to get up and put this on the chip. That's the top front seat, right? It's the curved part. I'm going to put that down like so. Like so. I'm going to start stitching on the right side. And I'm just going to trim up my piping a little bit, just to kind of neaten it up a little bit. And then I'm going to let that extend about an inch over. And I'm going to pick this up and show you what I did here, you guys. We got a lot of camera angles today. So I'm going to, well, when I'm done, I'll show you. Now I'm going to come to a corner. I'm going to cut the salvage to make my corner a little easier to take, right? I'm going to plant my needle in. I'm going to pick my foot up. And I'm going to swing my welt around and continue sewing. Get to this point, I'm going to get another cut in here. Plant my foot, my needle at the corner. Lift my foot up, swing my welt around, and continue sewing. And I'm going to extend this about an inch, and I want to show you that in a minute. I'm going to lift this off. Now this top piece is done. Look. So I extended that. Now my decking is going to go right over that. And that's what I'm going to do next, you guys. Well, you know what I'll do next? Why don't I do the front edge? Should I do the front edge first? Yes. So now I have the top. The front seat top marked, easy, right? And I'm going to place that here, and I'm going to flip this up like so. So we have a fitted top. Okay, so now what we're going to do is run my front on right from over here all the way to the other side, and then put my deck on. That's the next thing. So have everything marked nicely. I flip it. Let's get ourselves situated better here. Flip it. And then start running my piece. Don't have to fold this or anything, you just start running it about an inch beyond where I stopped. I'll show you in a minute. And now you're working blind, so you really have to get used to doing that. Practice, right guys? Feeling for the corner, I plant my needle, I lift my foot up, and I turn the fabric, and I do a little bit of a twist there to get the foot not to run over the welting. I'll show you that in a minute. Do not have to serge this fabric. This fabric is a nice heavy upholstery fabric. So you only have to serge fabrics that are inferior. And now what I'm going to do is go right to the corner, plant the needle. Sometimes I can get the needle to stop perfect. Nope, not that time. I needed to help it. Turn it. Give that foot a little bit of a jiggle to get it not to run over the welting. And then continue sewing to the next corner. Plant the needle. Lift the foot. Turn the fabric. And run this fabric right off the back seat. And I'll show you this. So far, right? So looking at my corners look really good. A lot of times it's the fabric that makes corners the first time. So sometimes on some fabrics slip away from the corner and you need to go back and do the corners. All these corners look great, so I'm really happy about that. I don't have to redo anything. So now what I'm going to do is run my deck along here. But what we're going to do is we're going to go over and make sure we fit this first to see what it looks like, you guys. So I'm going to swing the camera around. Make sure before I put my deck on that it's going to fit good. It really looks great, you guys. I really like it. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to sew on my last piece, which is the deck. Let's do that. Again, you know, look, isn't it great to have it marked? And you can even fold it like so and get a notch in the center point of the deck. Then fold your seat to make sure, just get a little notch, not a big notch. You don't want to go extend it more than 1/2 of an inch because that's your seam line. It's just a great reference point so that when I put this down, I'm working face to face. I could just line my notches up like that and then go all the way down kind of. You don't even have to pin this, you guys. You don't have to pin it if you're confident, right? And this piece is way too long, so I'm just going to trim this up a little bit. And I'm going to run right over that piping, but before I do that, I want to make sure that the selvage is facing down, okay? And I'm going to run right over that. This disappears in the arm, this piece, so you don't have to be perfect, but I'm going to angle it just a little bit. I'll show you this in a minute. And I'm doing 1/2 of an inch seam again. Ooh, we got a lot of piping. Hope we make that. That's a lot of fabric right there on my machine. Let's see if it made it. Yeah, it did a good job. And you know, we're still at the 1/2 inch seam. A little close to it, right? I check the seam once in a while to make sure that I'm good, and I am. I'm gonna come right here. Okay guys, so now I took the old the fabric off, and just to let you know, the customer, this is actually a customer's chair, and she did have a straight skirt and she wants to do no skirt. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to do right beforehand, right? Is make sure that the Dacron comes just feathered over the edge. That's really important, right? And also I'm going to add a piece of piping This is clever, you guys. So you guys on YouTube are learning something that sometimes we only teach online classes, and if you don't know about our online classes, you should check it out at Upholstery on Broadway, the website, and check out our online classes. But this is something that you only see sometimes. You don't see too often on YouTube. And I'm glad I have the opportunity to show my YouTube fans, because we have a lot of them. And that's fine. I love YouTube myself. Just make sure that you're subscribing if you like this series, please. It's so important. We do love it when we have subscribers. We're told that we're doing pretty well there, but we could do better, I think. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get eye level with this to show you, and I'm going to just lift up the dacron in that area right here. So my focus, the idea here is I'm going to create, because if I just upholster this and cut out my corners, I'm going to have to cover this. I'm going to have to staple this, and then I'm going to put a piping around here. But without this being put in before we put our fabric in, it's going to be a little difficult. So sometimes the piping just kind of rolls there. It doesn't have any place to go. It's not snug. This is what this is going to do. So I'm going to do, it's very simple, but you have to make sure you put it in the right spot. It can't be even. It can be just a little bit, actually, even with this horizontal plane. You don't want to be too much further. You don't want to be below that. I'm going to staple that. It's an horizontal plane, right? Staple that. Try to get a few staples in before you put the last staple towards the bottom, towards the back side. Make sure you cut it. I'm cutting it right even with the leg, okay? And you guys are going to see this more on when we get to that point. Now sometimes on the ends it's a good idea just to get a staple like that, so it doesn't, I don't want this moving or rolling. So I'll get a few more in here. Just this has to be tight. Let's do the other side. Let's just bring this down a little bit. Nice. The other side. Staple. Got my thumb where I want to cut. Make sure you move your fingers away. The only time you really can get hurt in upholstery is when those scissors, those very sharp razor blade like scissors blades, they come to a close fast. I always, if you notice me working, my hand is never ever at the bottom of a pair of scissors that's cutting. I've trained myself not to do that. You can really get hurt. So look, that's perfect. Bring that down a little bit. Now we're ready for our cover. I have my needle and thread ready to go. So what you want to do is you want to work reverse first on a fitted seat. See? I'm going to line up my corners. I'm going to hold my corners, and I'm going to pull my cover down. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to hold my corners and pull my cover down. Pull my cover down even more. Okay, I'm going to get my front corners are the most important. I'm not too worried about my back corners. I want to make sure that my front corners, this really came out nice. So we got a little bit of a curve here. I want to pull it this way just to get that right. Okay, now let's just take a look at our seam here to see how we do. We're going to have to make a couple of cuts here first. Before I do anything else, I'm going to make a cut just to loosen my fabric up a little bit, because we have the post to contend with. I'm just going to make a cut like that first. That could be enough. And then I'm going to make a cut. Notice the angle of my cuts. I'm going to see how that's going to fit in. You don't have to overcut. You don't want to overcut, right? Boy, this is really looking good. So the whole idea here is that this is going to recoil like so. So you want to make sure that that's not too tight. If you were just to upholster this, it would be too tight and it would rip. You'd hear it rip. So this is the solution. And we copied what they did. I think they had a pretty good system there. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to bring my deck right through here to the back. I'm not tucking. You're tempted to do all your tucking now. Don't do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the back first. Actually, let's not jump too far ahead. We're going to do the front. We're going to get the front perfect first, and then we're going to get a tack or a staple in the back there in the center, and then we're going to do all of the cuts. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so what I want to do first is, I love my corners, but I want to make sure that both corners are exactly from the floor, the exact same height. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this. I'm going to give this a little tug, and I got 12.5 to the top of the piping here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a pin tack for now, a pin staple. I turn my gun a little bit just to get it, just to keep it. It's not a permanent staple. I'm going to come over here, see a little bit of a bulge here. I'm going to take my mallet. I'm going to give it a little hammering down just to see if that helps. That's the wire edge, you guys, way deep the wire edge is. I think that's fine. And then I'm going to take, we said 12.5, right guys? So we're going to pull this down and 12.5. I'm going to give that a little pin staple. And then I'm going to come to the middle, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here. I want to make sure my salvage is to this side, you guys. It makes for a better looking piping. It sits better on the chair, which it is. I'm going to give that a little pull and make sure that this is 12.5 from the bottom. 12.5, perfect. I'm going to get a staple in there. Okay, then I'm going to come to the middle of that, 12.5. I'm going to get another staple there, and then I'm going to get another 12.5, and another staple there. And then I've got to come to one side. I don't have to keep measuring, you guys. This is a visual. You can see this. I'm looking to see. I just pulled this down perfectly straight, and then I'm going to come to the right to here, perfectly straight, and then I'm going to move over to the other side. I mean, I can't get it any straighter than that. Sometimes, I'm just going to give you a little tip, you guys, here. Sometimes the visual is better than actually measuring. Once you get your points that I did, then you go to this system and look. You're better off, okay? So now what I'm going to do is show you how to overcome this area. So we're going to make a cut here. Notice the angle. You don't want to be angled here. There's 3 ways you can cut this. One here, and one here. There's only one right way, and that's this cut. Or in the leg. Always remember, cut from the leg. Okay, so that's what gives you a pleat here and a pleat here, and it closes this cut up that has to be exact. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing with this cut, all right? Okay, and then what I'm going to do is trim this up. Then I'm going to take my little staple out that I put in there just to hold it. Hopefully you didn't do too much damage to the now exposed leg, because we're not putting a skirt on it. We will touch this up, obviously. So we're going to, just want to make sure we get all that staple out. See, I did too good of a job in there. Hold on one second. Okay, so you make sure you have your regulator at hand too, you guys. I'm going to give this a pull. And I had it folded, and I'm right below the piping now. And I'm going to put a staple right here, and then a staple here, and a staple here. That's going right there. The idea here is to keep your horizontal line, create a little bit of a ledge for your piping to sit on, or to sit under in this case. I'm going to give this a fold down. I'm going to pleat this over. I'm going to stretch it this way. I'm going to get a staple here, and then I'm going to finish my stapling the leg. Okay, now I'm going to show you on this part here. We need another cut just to make sure the fabric comes clean around here. We don't want to overcut. Trim this out a little bit and tuck this in, guys. Simply tuck it in. So you want this somewhat loose here, but you want it to look good, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Sometimes you need to add filling. I'm not sure if I need to do that yet. No, I don't. Look how nice and clean that looks, you guys. And look, it's going to do its job. See that? Now, if you want, you could put a little stuffing in there, but I'm not sure if it requires it. I really don't think it does. I'm really happy with that. So I'm going to get this staple now. And I'm going to get a couple of staples this way. See that? So now my transition line this way should be smooth. You see how I got a little bit of a problem in there? That's okay. We just take a needle and regulate it out. Look at that, you guys. Perfect. Let's do the other side for you to give you a little confidence now. We'll turn this around. We'll do the overhead view with this one on the front. Can we see that? You see that, Michaela?
On the above view?
Yeah. How's that?
Yep, that's good.
Actually, let's see if we can get this staple out clean. There you go. That's the idea. You don't want to put it in too deep. The other one was a little too deep, but you want it to come out clean, and it did. Actually, it didn't. Give that a pull. That's what they make touch-up for, right? So now, again, you want to angle it this way, right? Give it a tug this way to get a proper read on the fabric to where you want to cut it next. Right? So you do have to tug it in order to see where the cut is going to come to, and then trim it. Now on the other side, I did it half a side at a time, but let's see if we can get the whole side pleated by coming over to here and giving that a pull. Getting that stapled over here. So I want to get a front view because I want to be seeing it from how the customer's gonna be seeing it, and that's very important in upholstery, right? You guys, if you've seen my videos, you know that's what I try to strive for. So bring this out and get a staple right at the end here. I'm gonna corner this so you can see what I'm trying to do here. Trying to get this pleated cleanly. The reason that you want to pleat it is because it's clean. Okay, you don't want to just staple it. You know, and I'm struggling a little bit with this side for some reason. But I think because I didn't do it in a two-step process like I did the other side. So maybe you guys shouldn't do that. Go by the first side that I did, not the second side, because I'm having a harder time with the second side. So sometimes, you know, you think you want to speed up and you probably should slow down. That's good. So I'm just going to get staples, get the staples up in here. Sometimes I let the head of my gun work a little bit for me too, to try to do the job. So I'm trying to force it up because I didn't like it. I was a little picky about it because it was a little lower than I would have liked, but now it's fine. But at the head of the gun did the rest of the job for me. You guys who have been doing this for a while, you guys know what I'm talking about with that. So I'm going to take this now and staple that. Okay, we're going to go over here. We got a lot of material over here that we need to kind of overcome. So that needs to be cut out. So I'm going to fold this back. I'm going to take the angle up like this. I'm going to try to loosen that cover up a little bit to get a better read on it. This you can even tuck in. Most of this can tuck in. But this has to be trimmed up a little bit. And you just need a little more of a cut there like so. You can trim this up a little bit like so. And you can get, I like to sometimes pleat, you need to pleat this up at the top especially. I might overcut it a little bit, but we should be okay. Get this. And then pull this and get more staples here. Just like the other side. Okay, so we're going to get our overhead going for our deck. Okay guys, we're going to get one staple. This is a mistake a lot of people make. They get really kind of ahead of themselves and they really like to, every person that I've ever taught, I catch them, I say, okay, I just want you to tug in the back and get one staple. And they do that, and then they just want to just tuck the rest of it in. Don't do that because you have to make your cuts. Okay, you can't cut when it's tucked like that. So I'm just going to get one staple in the back just to hold the center. If you had a stripe, you'd be making sure the stripe was in the middle, but you don't have to worry about it on this fabric. Got a nice seam here, got a nice front seat. You want to get your front seat done first before you do the deck. So I got one staple there. I'm going to fold this at a 90-degree angle. These are some of the easiest cuts. This is what kind of builds your self-confidence here. Now you're going to get a good lesson about what cutting is all about. So you're cutting around a vertical post. You have a 90-degree. You can do a 45-degree angle on this. What is a 45-degree angle? It's not to the tip here of the fold. If you notice, it's more elongated this way than it is this way. So in actuality, The 45, if you're taking a true 45-degree angle based on the chair, not on the fold, it's like this. So you want to try to get used to things like that. You don't want to always go by, everybody wants to go by the point. That would probably work, okay? It's probably like a 40-degree angle at that point instead of a 45-degree angle point. Do you follow me? Try to get used to using, the other thing too that you can do is what you're trying to do is have an even amount of fabric both sides of that post, and after you cut it, out in space out there, they meet evenly. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Let's just do this cut. You don't want to go all the way because it travels, the post is set back, so you have to kind of judge where the post is before you start. You don't want to cut all the way to the surface. Okay, so I'm going to tuck this in. And then I'm going to have the front camera show what I was just talking about with the cut. Your goal here is trying to meet evenly from the post right out here. See that? So if you are cutting and you have nothing over here and a ton of fabric over here, you're angling it wrong. Okay? So now I'm gonna do the other cut. So a good habit to get into if you want, you can staple this down. That's what you just cut. The reason being, I'll explain this in a minute. If you make a mistake, when you get over here and you realize you made a mistake, instead of having both sides cut and not giving yourself enough fabric, you've only have one side cut, sometimes you can make up the difference if there's a mistake. Look, for instance, if you looked here after you cut it, before you cut this and you see your cut is hanging out, if you didn't see that and you cut this and stapled that down, you already committed to this cut. Do you follow me? So you might want to get in the habit of getting the center stapled, getting one done and anchored, and then cutting the other side. Okay, and let's do that now. That's, it depends on where you are in your upholstering. If you're confident, you don't even have to angle the middle, but I wouldn't suggest that. But you can cut both sides. This is really coming out nice. Sometimes wire edge seats actually really work out nicely, and this is no exception. It's a really nice seat. And a lot of people swear by wire edge. They say it's more comfortable. Just going to anchor that down. I'm going to anchor this down. You don't need too many staples when you do this part. Nice thing is we do not need to stitch this down. This fits so well, it just didn't even need to be stitched. Okay, I'm going to trim this up and then we're going to do our inside.